The story you're about to enjoy is a factual tale, read to you from a fictional location. We believe.
Madam, you are late.
I am aware, Mr. Darling, but I had a meeting with some friends. Now tell me honestly, does this scarf smell of wolfsbane to you?
Absolutely not, madam.
What about blood?
Only the tiniest bit, madam. And most certainly perceptible only by me.
Wonderful. See our guests in, won't you, Mr. Darling?
My pleasure, madam.
Welcome back to the Midnight Library, everyone. I'm your librarian and host, Miranda Merrick. From what I can tell, it seems as though you've all arrived safely inside. It seems all of you were careful to stay on the paved paths, the fenced walkways, and stepping stones through the courtyard leading up the stairs and into the library. And luckily, all of you appear to be conscious and not bleeding. That's good. Let us begin. You've no doubt noticed the extensive variety of all manner of plants, trees, animals, and combinations thereof, real or imagined, here on the grounds of the Midnight Library. In fact, we have in our employ the most talented and knowledgeable botanist and gardener, and it is because of him we also have an impressive array of rare and even one-of-a-kind specimens. However, in order not to come across as braggadocious, tonight we will entertain you with a fascinating read on Alnwick Castle, then the garden of Alnwick Castle, and then the even more darkly fascinating poison garden of Alnwick Castle. And finally, a cheery list of all the terrible things these marvelous plants can accomplish when given the opportunity. Anytime someone speaks the word castle, we each of us envision in our mind's eye our belief of what it should look like. Alnwick Castle would suit most of our visions in every way possible. Like a bright jewel in a lush gold setting, it rises high out of the rich old English landscape in which it is comfortably and deeply embedded. It is the very definition of sprawling and massive, taking up one's entire field of vision with its magical presence. It has baileys and battlements, bastions and belfries. Its soaring tower walls are encircled at their tops by the beautiful crenellations, the alternating high stone walls and low gaps that give a castle its distinctive look. Over 900 years old and built in 1096 by the Baron of Alnwick, Alnwick Castle is second in size only to Windsor Castle. The dramatic scene of embattlements, besiegements, and captures many times down through history. The castle has been owned and occupied by the Duke of Northumberland's family since the first Baron, Henry Percy, purchased it in 1309. Today, 700 years later, the Percy family, his direct descendants, still live within the castle walls. But we can still get in. Attracting 600,000 visitors each year, the castle is open in the spring, summer, and fall months, during which tours are given through its enchanting quarters and 42-acre gardens and grounds. And although we could spend actual days just describing the colorful and dramatic historic background, the endless grand interior, the resplendent design and decoration, and the vast collections of achingly beautiful paintings, furnishings, tapestries, and priceless unique items the castle holds within its 150 rooms. We are here to be poisoned. Tonight's sponsor is Sister Sarah Spencer's Spider Plants. She has just the thing you'll find, spooky pet and plant combined. No more boring house plants for you. Only Sister Sarah Spider Plants will do. All day long they wait in their pot. At night across the walls they trot. In daytime still and green and fair. At night entangled in your hair. In daylight just a common vine. In darkness they sprint down your spine. Dial 666 Spencer Spiders. The now famous Alnwick Poison Garden is actually a garden within a garden, and you no doubt have your suspicions, I'm sure, as to why that might be. The well-appointed, well-attended, and stately Alnwick Garden rests on 26 of the 42 manicured acres surrounding the castle. The sprawling garden was begun in the year 1750 by the first Duke of Northumberland, John Dudley. Initially a meticulous landscape of classic design typical of the 18th century, the garden specimens became more exotic and rarefied in the 19th century by the third Duke of Northumberland, Hugh Percy. He expanded the garden and filled it further with unique plants from all over the world. Even pineapples, a rare commodity at the time, were carefully grown in the garden's hothouses. To bolster the tremendous war effort during the Second World War, many sections of the garden's ground provided the English people with sustenance by becoming a vegetable garden. In fact, the entire nation took part in what was called the Dig for Victory gardening campaign during wartime to raise both morale and food. Sadly, after making its generous contribution to the war effort, the garden at Alnwick Castle became neglected and fell into disrepair in the years after the war ended. It closed in 1950. Cheerfully, though, in 1997, the Duchess of Northumberland, Jane Percy, a very industrious woman, began the revitalization of Alnwick Garden. And with a reported investment of more than £40 million, the garden, with much of its current-day splendor, opened to the public in 2001. So, what kind of garden goodies does one get for that kind of money? My dear guests, I'm sad to confess that even the Midnight Library's wonderfully weird garden cannot compete with what you can take in the Alnwick Garden. Before we behold our beloved poisonous plants, I would be doing you a tremendous disservice if I didn't share with you a short list of some of the divine feasts for the eyes inside the lavish garden. In addition to the famous fastidious layout of a typical English garden, with its arabesque and symmetrically designed beds and pathways, all overflowing with exquisite trees, shrubs, and flowers of thousands of varieties, there are whimsical topiary bushes, water features with rushing falls, tiered fountains, and even a comical giant bathing in a serene woodland pond. There are regal statues, a classic maze and games area, and large graceful swings from which one may sit and view many of the fairy tale-like flower beds. One of the most popular and utilized features of the garden is its awe-inspiring treehouse that is so large it has within it a restaurant and bar. Picturesque to almost the point of unbelievability, the garden is available as a wedding and event venue. I think we should all reserve it and meet there as soon as possible. All right, enough of all the niceties. Let's get down to the bottom of the poison barrel. Inspired after a visit to the Medici Poison Garden in Padua, Italy, Duchess Jane Percy was determined that Alnwick Garden should have its very own poisonous plant section. Still stunningly on display, just like the other strikingly beautiful plants and flowers in the rest of the garden property, So too are the lovely but deadly plants and flowers in the similar-looking poison garden. It opened, well, sort of, in 2005. It is open, and you can take a tour of it, but you can't just roam around willy-nilly. The poison garden is barricaded behind high, locked wrought iron gates, distinctively emblazoned with a skull and crossbones, and blatant words of warning. These plants can kill, and these woeful words do not lie. The mere touch or breath inhaled near some of these pretty specimens can incapacitate or even kill a person. For the strict sake of safety, groups of no more than 20 people at a time are cautiously escorted through the exceptionally dangerous plants. The botanist guides that lead the tours are expertly trained in the noxious capabilities of the fearsome fauna, and what to do in case anyone should make contact with them, which is mainly thwarted ahead of time by the way in which the plants are displayed. Many are a distance off the pathway in specialized, unreachable containers behind glass or cordoned off. Some are beyond reach behind bars or inside cages. Surprisingly, some of the plants are well within reach or emerging from the ground at a person's feet. All of them are explicitly marked with signs of warning of their harmful effects on the human body. The expert gardeners who intimately attend the hazardous plants do so wearing personal protective equipment such as gloves, masks, and bodysuits. The Duchess, a known champion of education, thought that the poison garden was a much more exciting draw for children and adults alike, saying that children especially are very interested in not only which plants are most deadly, but how quickly a person would die, and specifically how ghastly their pre-death symptoms and sufferings would be. Charming. Now, 100 ways to be poisoned. I only wish we had time to luxuriously list them all, but out of the roughly 100 dangerous plants inside the grievous garden, we have a list of a few most famous for their savage powers, some of which the Alnwick garden had to obtain special licenses in order to grow. Notedly, the Duchess has also stated in interviews that many unknowing people have in their midst the same toxic plants that grow in the poison garden. The laurel hedge is a very common plant found in the countryside as well as directly on a homeowner's land or yard. It's only when a person prunes the shrub and places the branches on a tarp inside their enclosed automobile that a problem arises. Laurel branches, when severed, emit toxic fumes, which has caused many a driver to slowly become dull in their perception. They fall asleep at the wheel and sometimes crash their cars. There are several plants of a similar nature in the garden that carry a "do not smell" warning sign on them, and in spite of the warning, 7 people were once evacuated for medical treatment after fainting from inhaling the toxic fumes emanating from the plants. It's a little-known fact that all around us in our everyday existence, we purchase, plant, and enjoy many of these toxically talented plants. Some are dually useful in that depending on the part of the plant you use and how you process it, you may get a life-saving drug or a wretched, deadly poison. A few you've probably heard of: foxglove, lily of the valley, narcissus, oleander, and poinsettias. One of the more salacious plants in the garden, and a favorite of the Duchess, is the heavenly-sounding angel's trumpet, a plant with wondrous aphrodisiac properties, right up to the point when it kills you. The plant grows wild in South America, but when imported to England, the Victorian ladies would harvest the angel trumpet flowers for display. they would also tap a few specks of the pollen from the flowers into their tea or into their guests' tea to induce an LSD-like euphoric experience and uninhibited mood, making for a lively tea, to say the least, the effects of which continue until a lethal amount accidentally, or perhaps on purpose, ends the life of the partakers. Tonight's reading at the Midnight Library is brought to you by Miss Deed's Merry Seeds. In-laws more like outlaws, workmates more like primates. You're in need of Miss Deed's Merry Seeds. When these charmed pips cross sour lips, they'll sweetly recondition any bitter disposition. Stir them into their toffee, drop them in their coffee. Don't let your day be wasted with their passive-aggressive hatred. Try Miss Deed's Merry Seeds. Order a devil's dozen. The infamous plant that sent Socrates to his death is happily housed here also. Found guilty of the corruption of youth and failing to worship the Athenian gods, Socrates was given a killing cocktail made from the poisonous hemlock. The large and beautiful hemlock tree's caution marker touts the plant's lethal ability to begin by first numbing the extremities, the fingers and toes, then working its way inward in the body, causing the limbs to deaden and go cold. When it reaches the chest muscles and renders them useless, the person can no longer breathe, but the brain remains unaffected for a time, cruelly allowing its victim time to think. How kind. In past times, a common cure in many households was contained in a little bottle of castor oil. Made from the Ricinus communis plant, the oil was used for everything from typical digestion ailments to earaches in children. However, the seeds from this useful plant are extremely deadly. The ingestion of a single seed will kill a person, and the processing of the seeds into ricin gas can kill any and all who breathe in the tiniest amount. The victims suffer severe nausea and vomiting at first, followed by convulsions, followed by the disintegration or liquefaction of their vital organs, the liver, kidneys, and spleen. If I were to tell you that we have here on the Midnight Library grounds a lovely old inheritance plant, well, I imagine that sounds quite historically romantic. It may even conjure images of families picnicking beneath the massive tree and the younger folks taking home the acorn-like seed pods to then plant and begin their own dreamy tradition over and over again. No such luck, I'm afraid, for in the Alnwick poison garden, the generous-sounding inheritance plant is what has descended from the strychnine tree, an import that grows natively in India and Southeast Asia. The tall and handsome tree is also known as poison nut, snakewood, and the harmless-sounding Quaker buttons. Before forensic-style testing was available, the strychnine tree provided one of the world's most popular poisons, and the inheritance nomenclature, it is labeled so due to the early history of young brides who were eager to get their hands on their inheritance from the wealthy old men whom they had married. In fact, thanks to the plant's astounding ability to precisely mirror the symptoms of seizure, paralysis, stroke, and heart attack, it's thought the killing drug was administered countless numbers of times, especially since it was so easily obtained as commonly sold rat poison. It should be noted that if you decide to one day visit the Alnwick Poison Garden with a particular motive in mind, a morbid mission of sorts, let's say, There are guards on hand to inspect the pockets of anyone believed to be in possession of any part of any plant. And with no particular motive or reason whatsoever, I will casually and happily inform you that we have no such persons or policies of any such nature here in the Midnight Library. However, I would also freely state that none of our plants typically look or behave in the same manner twice. So we wish you good luck and good night, and thank you for visiting us. Do be careful on your way out, won't you?
Wonderful reading this fine night, madam. Although I do regretfully have to inform you that the snake plant in Hexham Hall has chosen a lady visitor, the wife of the village baker.
Darling, when you say chosen, do you mean bitten?
Indeed, madam, I do. Will she die?
No, not at this point in the solstice. She will, however, believe with every atom of her being that she is, in every way, a chicken.
For how long?
7 years.
Good then. The baker won't run out of eggs.
The Midnight Library is co-produced by Tess Feifel and Astonishing Legends Productions and is edited by Sarah Voorhees-Wendell with music and sound design by Ryan McCullough. Special thanks to Miranda Merrick and Mr. Darling. No part of the show may be reproduced in any manner without express written consent. Copyright Astonishing Legends, all rights reserved.